Call to order this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission for Sebastian, Florida. Microphone. Pardon me? Microphone. It's on. It's green. Uh-oh. The red button came on. Okay. Today's date, April 20th, 2023. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Yes. Ms. Matthews?
Present.
Ms. Cottenberg?
Here.
Mr. Carter?
Present.
Ms. LaRusso?
Present.
Mr. Haddix?
Here.
Ms. Battles?
Here.
Ms. Kinchin?
Here.
And Ms. Giese?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, under announcements and agenda modifications, there are no agenda modifications that I am aware of. However, this is our first meeting since January of this year, and I'd like to thank Mr. Alvarez, who has also resigned, for his service. And he, of course, also gave many volunteer hours, and we wish him well. Congratulations to Ms. LaRusso for being recently appointed as a regular member, and welcome and congratulations to Sherry Matthews and Ms. Giese for joining this select group of people. You are welcome here, and we look forward to working with you, both of you. This evening, Mr. Lucier has been excused from tonight's meeting, and Ms. Matthews will be voting in his place. Thank you. Okay, you've all had an opportunity to review the meeting, the minutes for the past meeting. I ask you if there are any additions or corrections.
I have a correction. Okay. On page 10, it lists Mrs. LaRusso used the single-serve tunnel in Vero. No, I did not. I believe it was Ms. Kinchin that had commented she had used it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other additions or corrections? Chair will entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes of January 19th, 2023 of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
With the correction?
With correction.
Second.
Duly noted.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we do not have an LPA hearing this evening, nor do we have a quasi-judicial, and we also have no unfinished business. Therefore, we will move right to new business. Item A is our discussion for uses identified as special uses: car washes, kennels, RV resorts, campgrounds, and laundromats. And a zone, should we take these into certain zonings? Should we keep them as requiring conditional use? And I will open the discussion now.
Thank you, Commissioners. First of all, I can say that we had a scheduled public hearing for tonight. We placed a 9 instead of a 0 in our legal ad, and because it was a rezoning, we did have to re-advertise. We were having some residents come in. So I apologize that we do have this one item on, but I'm kind of glad it's just one item. It'll give us a chance to discuss, and we don't have that pressure that we have another item following this or after this, so that we can really get into a nice discussion regarding this. This is going back to, and I may do just a little primer first so that we kind of smooth our way into what we're doing here tonight and what we want to discuss, is this did come up because of, I think it put a spotlight on our recent special use permits, the car washes. I think the process of the special use is not what we're looking at to revise. I think that works still okay. It comes before your board. These are for items, as I noted in my memo. A special use is a use which is not specifically provided for in the zoning regulations. And in the past, that has been car washes, RV resorts, campgrounds. We did have a special use for a crematory, but I think if you noticed in the table of uses I gave you, crematory is on that. We've designated as a specific zoning district. That is the only place in our code that mentions any requirements for crematory. But I think it's an industrial. I think at the time we discussed that would be an accessory use to a funeral home or something. But this isn't necessarily for crematories, but RV resorts, campgrounds. Kennels, we have a kennel in town, but that's been there. It's been grandfathered in. We have no land development regulations for kennels, and laundromats was another one we started thinking about that we don't have any. I don't know if that's a retail use, it's a service use. We would probably process it as a special use if it came in requesting a location. The comprehensive plan has established land uses for the city. And within each one of those land uses, we have specific zoning districts. So these are zoning districts that we're going to be looking into, not land uses. A good example is our commercial riverfront land use, which is everything east of the railroad tracks, actually has 3 zoning districts in that mixed-use, riverfront mixed-use land use. We have CR, CWR, and RM8. So what we wanted to give you was the zoning district map so that you can see where all our zoning districts are laid out. And of course, zoning districts are set up with specific permitted uses. These are permitted. You just make sure your site plan's in place, and we go before a public hearing for you guys for the site plan, and you're approved. We have conditional uses, which says these are allowed in these zoning districts, but we have other specific criteria that you have to meet to have that use in that zoning district. And then, of course, the code sets up for these special uses. So with the 2 last car washes that came in, I think it spotlighted and generated the need to have this discussion, because we can clearly see that special uses aren't really guiding where these are. It's basically the developer that says, hey, I found a piece of property and I'd like to put this use here. What do you guys think? And based on city council at the time or what they present, we don't have specific guidelines to guide where we want those type of uses in our town. I think at this point we have a lot of car washes, and so I think we do want to possibly make that a permitted or conditional use into zoning districts that now we get to designate and say, you know what, we have this many car washes, we're gonna specify which zoning districts we would like these in. But then again, that's part of our discussion. You may feel that car wash should still be looked at uniquely one by one on the location that it is, and we'll keep those special uses. RV resorts is one that was trying to think too, where would we want to put those? There are certainly varieties of those RV resorts, those campgrounds. I was thinking of Whispering Palms, which is a mobile home park that has RV sites. So we may want to think about that when we're thinking of zoning districts. We have, sometimes somebody just wants to do 4 or 5 RV sites on their VFW. Some of our other sites that just want to do for their members passing through. Or do we want to keep those special use as a special use, or do we want to designate that? I can let you know that we do have some calls in place for RV resort that have done some due diligence, and we've had 2 more calls for 2 more car washes for some due diligence on can we put them here, what's the process and all of this. So we don't want to certainly rush this through, we want to think it through, but there's nothing in place right now as we get this process going. I didn't know, probably one thing I didn't explain in the memo though is if you thought that staff wanted you to do the worksheets for tonight, or do we want to have this initial discussion and then you guys do the worksheets for another discussion meeting? And certainly from that, though, we don't want to prolong this. We will then, once we get the input from you, staff will put together a draft ordinance for you to review. We've done this different ways when we've had to change the ordinances or make amendments to the Land Development Code. There was a lot of code update that we needed from our comprehensive plan when we recently adopted that needed to get added into the Land Development Code. And we have hired a consulting consulting planning company, Kimley Horn, that has been helping Lisa with that. So those amendments, we usually you notice we'll bring those to you that already had an ordinance. We kind of did the public hearing first. We didn't have this workshop or discussion. We just set up the public hearing and brought you an ordinance that had all the strikeouts or the proposed language in that. So that's one way we bring those to you. There was a couple of ordinances, the fence ordinance, adding tattoos. There were some other smaller tweaks to the Land Development Code where we also, staff kind of put together the revised ordinance with the strikeouts and the red line in, and we brought that to you either for discussion or that first initial public hearing. But this one, we felt was good to bring it at the ground level. You're going to help us, we're going to have this discussion. We'll work through where you think some of these uses should go. If we want them to be conditional use, what criteria, conditions do you want to put on them? And then they're going to need some parking calculations. So, you can help us with that. And we wanted to bring this starting off from scratch at a discussion. But we'll work our way through once we get your thoughts organized and what you want to direct staff. We'll then come together we can do it either with the public hearing with a draft ordinance, or if you'd rather have another discussion on a draft ordinance and tweak it, and then we'll have that public hearing. And of course, that public hearing is a recommendation to City Council, who ultimately will, tweak again some more, or else approve what we're recommending. And with that, I think on these type of ordinances, a little bit different from the special uses. If anybody was offended that our recommendation on the car washes wasn't really adhered to by City Council, but when it comes to uses like this and where they go in the zoning districts, I know Council looks forward to your input, and I think they respect that in this. So that's where we're jumping off on. And any questions, or if you want to go use by use, or if you have any general questions on the process, let's jump in. I think we could do it, like I say, item by item, or however you'd like to proceed.
Okay, thank you. In thinking about how we approach this, I would like to, my objective would be to keep this kind of free moving, and if we start with a topic and then just go along and get everybody's opinion on it and perhaps come to a consensus, or maybe not. And it might take more than one time around to get to the point where we're ready for an ordinance on it. So,
Madam Chairman, I do have a question for staff,
Okay.
before we get started on this. No matter what we decide, this still has to go before the council, correct? To get these changes approved?
Yes.
Okay. And I'll put this delicately. What if we decide on one thing, and then let's say a car wash finds another piece of property that they've all found here, and City Council allows that? So these regulations really don't amount to anything.
Yes and no. I'm going to answer that by saying that the code also allows that, so we have our special use permit for processes for uses that we don't have anything on. The code also has a special exception process, which says that if you're a permitted or conditional use in this zoning district, but you found property in this zoning district, you can request a special exception. You still have to meet all the conditional use criteria and all. And yes, you can possibly get that. We haven't had any, but I think it's a bit harder to get because you really have to show why it's okay to be in that zoning district. And especially though, right now, because we're going through this, I know staff in our staff report would probably present the case that says, hey, the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council of the city just established what zoning districts we want this in. So this is too new. This isn't 10 years past, or maybe we need to look at our zoning districts. This is new, where we just established where we'd like car washes, and this is not the zoning district that we wanted in. So there's a case for that at least.
So
You are
to put
correct.
a few safeguards on it, say conditional use would be something that we'd want to look at?
Yes, so if it's a conditional use in commercial limited zoning, and you want to put it in the CR next to, closer, CWR on Indian River Drive, those conditional use criteria still have to be met. So that may be that might be a hurdle for them not to be able to put that on there. But like I say, I think at this point, since we're going through this process, there's the leg that we're gonna stand on for a special exception, saying, we just established where we want these, and
Right,
this is kind of,
okay,
so
got
I
it.
think it's gonna be a little bit harder.
Okay.
The bottom line answer is yes, city council could determine that there was a situation where they were okay with that other zoning district, but, they're also gonna have to approve any changes that you recommend, and I think it'd be harder for them to establish, to provide a reason why they were gonna go against something that they just approved through a special exception.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, let's start with car washes, since that's what,
I'm gonna make an easy one first, though. Is there any of the uses that we've provided, and please let us know if you, I don't know if you reviewed all of the zoning districts, but if there is a use that you think that is not in our code that we should also consider, please let us know. But is there any of these uses that you would like to keep as special use? We'll just remove that off the table then. Car washes, RV resorts, is that something that you still would feel should be a special use? I think that way we can just take that one and not have to discuss it if you want to keep it as a special use. Kennels or
Let me
laundromats.
have, if I may, Madam Chairman, a question. If you recall, I think it was, well, it's been several years ago, we had a request for an RV park off of Fleming. And would that have been a designated area, or would that?
So I
don't
let
recall,
you know
but I
that,
know we didn't want it.
the 5 car washes that we have all been approved through special uses. We do still have, and you'll notice on our last ordinances for the special uses, which in hindsight we did not do for previous special uses, is we put an expiration date on the car washes. They were good for 3 years. 5 years. You have to have your building started and that car wash built in 5 years, or that special use goes away. We do have approved, there is a campground for Skydive Sebastian that was probably approved about 10 years ago on the west side of that road. It doesn't have an expiration date on it, and they did last year begin to resurrect that. The special use itself isn't expired, but they have to do a site plan that still would have to come before you. It was missing some items and they never came back with that. And yes, the RV resort for about 100 and some, it was supposed to be a high-end RV resort.
right.
It had 2 pages of conditions through the resolution, and there's no expiration date on that. And so that is a valid special use permit for an RV resort. But I can let you know that we have had some pre-application meetings. The current developers are looking to do multifamily townhomes and apartments instead of the RV resort. But if that doesn't work, they're falling back on the RV resort and will possibly develop that. So we do want to, on staff's brain, we're definitely in our special use permits going forward. Our resolutions of granting those will always have an expiration date on those. But, so we do have a couple of approved campgrounds and RV resorts. I don't know if they'll ever come to fruition. Maybe the Skydive Sebastian.
So if I could just chime in, it's interesting that we're talking about this one first, because that's the one that I had RV resorts and campgrounds as I thought should remain a special use, just for a couple reasons. One being that it's a very niche type of use, and there's not really much currently in a use similar to that in the Land Development Code. So I feel because of that reason, having it be a special use gives the applicant a chance to come before us, and we have the opportunity as, the board and the commission to then look at each applicant individually that comes forward to us. I think that of all of the 4, that was the one that I had as remaining special use, but that was my input.
Dory, I have a question. On Indian River Drive, there used to be the trailer park, and then the trailers vacated and the property was sold, and I believe the owner still has his big for sale sign back up. Now, can that continue to be a trailer park?
No.
Or that's
So
done
once they
with?
took those trailer parks off, it was a non-conforming use. The property is currently zoned RM8, So there is the 8 units per acre, multifamily, single-family, but mobile homes are not considered a structure that you can have in your RM8. Mobile home, the placement of mobile homes is specific to RMH zoning district, which we really only have Park Place, Palm Lake Club, and Orange Heights. So those, they have lost their grandfather rights once they remove those. So it's zoned RM8, it'd be multifamily, but not in. Now, mobile homes are different from RV, recreational vehicles. So that's why I say I was trying to think of, just this week, I thought of Whispering Palms or Whispering Pines on US 1 as you head down to Vero. It's kind of mixed use, where it's a mobile home park, but they also do have RV campgrounds, RV sites. And if you remember, you may not, but the 18 acres where we had the Shady Rest mobile home park that annexed into the city was zoned mobile home park in the county, but it was annexed into the city as commercial riverfront. And they said, now they lost their mobile home grandfathering, but they asked the city so that they would able to make some income to still pay taxes and keep the park going, that as the mobile homes were taken off, that they were able to turn that site into an RV park, and the city had given that approval for a certain amount of time, and that's why for a while there was mobile homes behind the, next to the church, but to the northern part next to Home Depot, there were RV sites. But that was only a certain time specific too. But I was trying to think that there are some of those scenarios too, where you have some of your mobile home parks. What if Orange Heights, requested that they could come in with some RV sites or something? And I think some of those RVs are the same price as mobile homes these days too. I mean, they're, you can have those high-end RVs, but that's just a consideration too. I think staff agrees though too, that RV resorts can be very site-specific, and some of them are so very different. Some of them have no landscaping between them. They're just RV sites. I can be honest, there's another RV that's looking in that would have more under trees, something that you may see up north where you've got more space between them. And that may be a consideration where then you feel that is okay for that specific site. So it was something that staff had thought that RV resorts may be the one use that we may want to keep as a special use. And I'll have to be honest, and I seem to be rambling, but instead of the discussion, I should have probably, and I did not, search Vero Beach or any of the county's code to see how what zoning districts they put RV resorts in. I don't know offhand if they have a specified district that they allow those in, to kind of guide us on that if we wanted to be similar to Vero or Brevard or Indian River County. I apologize for that.
Okay. Any other questions before we? Okay, let's roll with car washes. And I think we'll start with Mr. Carter. Give us your opinions of should they be a permitted use in, I think if we go through each zoning district, you can tell us whether permitted, conditional, or not allowed.
I think I'm going to go with conditional, all the way down to commercial riverfront and make it not allowed. And not allowed on commercial waterfront residential, but allowed or conditional under industrial and heavy industrial.
Not allowed, did you say, on industrial?
No, heavy industrial, conditional, industrial conditional, waterfront residential, none, no. And also commercial riverfront, no. And the rest, conditional.
So that would be commercial limited and commercial general.
I'm sorry?
When he said the rest conditional, that would be commercial limited and commercial general. A quick history too on most of our CR and our CWR, and of course some of our RM8, which I don't think we want a car wash in any residential. So, but that is pretty much in our CRA. Those two zoning districts are specific to our CRA and our waterfront area. And we did that similar in 2010, or the last time 2000, at the time when we created the CRA, we had 5 used car lots in that area. and we took them out of the CWR and the CR. We allowed them in commercial general, which on your map, we have a few areas of that commercial general, but, so there's nothing, we can say there's already too many car washes in that riverfront area, and of course, the commercial general on 512, but yeah, there's nothing wrong with taking the car washes out of these uses and saying we don't want any more in this area, and putting them in some zoning districts, that are like that. The other one we did that was, that we only regulated it to industrial, because it wasn't a very high visible one, is adult entertainment, and for a while, that was tattoo stores that included that, but, you know, it's certainly putting it in industrial and heavy industrial, we have some properties available, but I don't think a lot that's gonna be able to, fit car washes. And I love the idea of conditional use in that definitely some of our conditional uses can be distances from residential areas, or that you can't be adjacent to a residential zoning district, not only use, but zoning district. You certainly can put conditions on, say it has to be 1,000 feet from another existing car wash, or 5,000 feet from another existing car wash. So those are the conditions that you can also consider too, when you say conditional use, when we get to that phase of what we're doing.
I want to thank you for the map, by the way. It was very helpful because in fact, I changed my mind about several things that I thought would be appropriate by noticing on the map that some of the places that were zoned that way, it wouldn't be appropriate for. It was very helpful. Thank you. Ms. Giese?
I just had a question. How do you, back to car washes, how do you determine how many parking spaces are needed for a car wash?
So,
Square feet again, or?
the 2 car washes that were approved for the special use, just this week, we got both their site plans in. And we don't have anything in the code for parking spaces. So at this point, staff's just trying to be logical on it. It's kind of up to them. I mean, we're going to look at how many vacuum spaces that we have, and the nature of a car wash, you're gonna go through that tunnel and then go park to vacuum out your car. But we acknowledge that there are gonna be some employees there that aren't gonna take up those vacuum spaces, so, we're assuming that, you know, we're gonna be looking at least 3-4 parking spaces for each of the car wash for their employees for each shift. But this would be another thing that we'd like to establish, because we don't have any specific guidelines for that, for parking, for car washes in the code right now.
Any other comments about car washes? How you feel on where they belong or where they don't belong, or?
Well, I don't think they belong in commercial riverfront or commercial waterfront residential. I would not allow them there. That's my opinion. The rest could all be conditional uses.
Okay.
Although we're gonna have plenty in the commercial riverfront area soon.
Oh, my turn, yeah.
I think enough is enough.
I have to agree with Mr. Carter as far as the conditional use in industrial, but I understand what you're saying. There may not be properties big enough, and then you don't want them trying to do a, quote, land swap into another zone or something. I have checked off, crossed off, checked off. Yeah, they go there. No, wait, let me look at the map. Oh, I don't know if I want that there now. Just like Ms. Cottenberg had said. Definitely conditional use with industrial, and I would really keep it special use for any of the commercial zones, and no-go on the riverfront at all.
So once we establish these uses as a permitted or conditional use in a zoning district, they no longer go through a special use permit. You know, so they come off the special list. So when somebody calls and they say, can I have a car wash? Yes, it only can be in commercial general zoning district. So we wouldn't take it through, unless you meant special exception, I apologize, you said special use. It'll no longer be a special use because now we're establishing some regulations, but special exception. And that's usually not anything that we throw out. Staff does not offer that up right away when somebody says, where can I put a car wash? Commercial general and industrial. And then only if they, well, I'm looking at this property, are you sure there's no way I can, and then we'll go, okay, there's this process of special exception. But, you know, that's a last chance type of thing that we like to, if only if we're offered about that, because otherwise, like I say, it does kind of defeat putting a use into a specific zoning district if they're going to use that process a lot. But it is an extra step, and it's harder to get a special exception, but yes, I have that down, thank you then.
That's it for me.
Sherry?
Well, I'm in agreement so far with what's being said, that I'm definitely no on the riverfront, any of the working waters riverfront residential. I still believe I personally think the conditional use.
Do you have the microphone on?
I do.
I keep getting this red line.
Oh, you're fine. Industrial, possibly the I would be for conditional use, stay.
Okay.
I would have a couple of questions, because our council did say that they can't choose winners and losers for businesses. So is there a way that you can say how many types of businesses are permitted within the city?
Nothing that I know of. There's,
So we could have 12 car washes and it's okay?
Yes, but if you make them conditional uses, you are creating this stuff. So, I'm trying to think of a good one that we can use. Bars have to be a certain amount of distance from churches. I know a very good one we can use is our medical marijuana dispensaries that we created. And the state said that you could choose to either have them or not have them. The city decided to choose them, but that we had to apply zoning the same as pharmacies. So the city went back and tweaked our code, but we do have distances for both pharmacies and medical marijuana. You have to be a certain distance from schools, public park grounds, but also distances from another medical marijuana dispensary. And so we have had at least 3 or 4 that have approached us to say, could I put one here? And of course, the zoning allowed for it, but once we went to the conditional uses, the separation distances, it was either next to a church, or we just had one that was close to another, across the street from the existing one. So that's a way too, you kind of, as you make them conditional uses, you're not always going to get 12 car washes because they may be close to another one. Another thing that regulates a lot of them, that prevents having them come in so many, is distances from residential use. So when we get to the conditional use, I know that that's going to be a staff recommendation, that we put a distance that the car wash and vacuum stations have to be from a residential, and it does make a difference if you say district or residential use, because we have a lot of mixed use land use and zoning districts now. Our CR has, you can do residential and multifamily. So, I mean, you can have a commercial component and a residential component, but it's a commercial district. So, if you say you have to be so many distance, 1,000 feet from a residential district, but you're a house in a CR zoning, that's not going to apply to you. But if you say it has to be a certain amount from a residential use, that means you can't put that there. So sometimes the conditional use criteria will create a scenario where you're not going to have that many. Most of our restaurants and our retail business, as you can see, are not conditional uses. And that's why you get sometimes a Walgreens across from CVS or Domino's across from Pizza Hut. Now, it trickles down to the intensity of the use also. So if you've got a restaurant with a drive-through, that's a conditional use in most of our zoning districts that requires that your drive-through has to be a certain amount of distance from a residential district. And sometimes the conditional use criteria will create a scenario where that property is not going to be allowed for that type of use.
I got you. So I would agree so far with the rest of the panel on the conditional use of the commercial limited, commercial general. Not allowed commercial riverfront, not allowed commercial waterfront residential, conditional industrial, conditional heavy industrial. I mean, I can almost say permitted. But regardless, what I do believe is to confirm and validate your point, is that the conditions, and I don't know that all gets accomplished this evening, is going to have to determine those distances from competitors and those distances from current residential uses or potential. And then to follow up with that is for all of the parking, you gave us that outline of all the different parking spaces available for all the different types of businesses. And I think that can be used as a platform to determine the parking spaces for these types of uses. But I don't know that you're gonna get that accomplished all tonight,
Yeah.
but.
And I think, and I'm throwing this out as another condition, again, when we get to that for car washes, we want them to be successful. If you're gonna build and we want them to be successful, but do you need that much impervious area for 28 vacuum stations? You know, that's another thing that you may want to consider putting a limit on, a maximum of a certain amount of vacuum stations, for car washes too, because that's a big visibility of the car washes.
Yeah, I think
so
that,
I'm
and
throwing
I'm
out
not sure if
some
the
ideas.
city has something in place, but water would be another concern of mine, and the type of water that's used between potable and reuse.
Yep, we can require that they have a reclamation system of percentage or something like that, so
I
we
think it
definitely
would
can
have
put
to be
that
a
on
rich-
conditional uses.
I think it needs to be a rich number of percentage.
There's a few conditional uses that have, I'm trying to think of one, mini storage, but also model homes. I mean, it's okay to have 9, 10 conditions for these different uses. You know, we don't have to just limit it to 1 or 2, or, you know, from residential. You certainly can come up with, as long as they're, what's the word I can say, not prohibited to but that you're looking at it as the safety and welfare of the adjacent properties and the growth of the city, and not just punitive, that we just don't want any more car washes, so we're gonna load up all of these conditional uses so that we can't have any more in here. But I think as long as our conditions are logical, they're probably gonna stand any type of legal challenge.
Gotcha. I think that's what I have for you.
Ms. Babbitt?
Okay, I got a little bit of input. So for the commercial 512 district, when looking at it and looking at the existing uses that are in that district, I think that car wash would be similar to, you know, the other car wash that's already on 512. So, and in my mind, I think that corridor would be one of the better places to put a car wash, in my opinion. So I think, you know, that would be a permitted use in my preference. The commercial limited zoning seems to be more of a neighborhood commercial, and it seems to be very limited to down south of Publix off of 512 and 510, is that?
I was gonna mention that because I know everybody was talking about commercial limited, and there are only 2 areas zoned commercial limited.
Yeah.
One is kitty corner from the high school, next to the Space Coast Credit Union. And I think it can't be more than 2 acres, I know
Yeah.
it's not. The other commercial limited is around Schuman Drive, right up north of the Pelican Island. And the intent of that commercial limited was to have a corner dry cleaners or a little bodega store or something, if you want to call it, a little, you know, corner market store that you could run in and get, you know, beer, bananas, and, you know, coffee or whatever. So those are the only 2 commercial limited, and I don't think, if we do keep it in the commercial limited, we would definitely want to put some criteria that it's a certain distance from residential, that most likely would eliminate that Schuman Drive area.
Yeah.
I think it's
So-
fine too, to not even have the commercial limited, to not have it in that zoning
Yeah,
district.
so to that point, I would say not allowed in commercial limited because it is more of a neighborhood commercial zoning, and I don't think this is an appropriate use for neighborhood commercial limited zoning. General commercial, I think that based on where it's located, and the types of uses in general commercial, this use would be acceptable. So I would say permitted for general commercial. For commercial riverfront, I'm a little bit conflicted here, but based on where that zoning district lies, most of our US 1 corridor is in that district. And there are currently car washes on US 1.
4.
So.
There will be 4.
I think because there's similar uses present, I I would tend to lean towards conditional use with the following conditions. One, that the property would have US frontage, because it wouldn't make sense to allow it in a property that, you know, wouldn't be frontage of US one. And then to Dennis's point, I think a condition that they must have connection to county water and sewer and have a reclaim system on site. And then another condition would be not adjacent to residential use. I know that there's residential uses in that area. And then potentially a distance from residential, as you mentioned. I think also increased setbacks for noise considerations. And then and this is a big one for me. I think that there's a lot of properties in this district that are not technically brownfields, but I mean, they're previously developed sites that don't have anything on them right now. And I think that one of the conditions I would like to pose would be, it would have to be a redevelopment of an existing site. So not a green site along the corridor. And then also a distance from another car wash. So that's a lot of considerations or a lot of conditions for commercial riverfront, but I feel as if, again, back to my initial point about 512, I think that the US 1 corridor, I mean, that's, with US 1 frontage, there are some properties where it makes sense. And I get everybody's thought that we have enough car washes. But I also think that, you know, coming from my background, market is not, you know, the market's gonna drive what is needed. And obviously with a lot of demand of car washes, there's somebody that knows something more than we know about the market conditions of car washes at the moment. Commercial waterfront residential, obviously, no. And then industrial and heavy industrial, I was trying to find where heavy industrial was.
So this is from our new comp plan. We created a heavy industrial land use. This was kind of at the request of a person that wanted to do a recycling facility. So we created a heavy industrial land use. We are assuming that they were going to come in with a rezoning for heavy industrial zoning. The heavy industrial zoning did come before you. We had to create heavy industrial zoning district requirements. And so that has already come before the board, and it's, I believe, it might not be codified in your book yet, but we have created the heavy industrial zoning district. We do not have any property zoned, though, heavy industrial yet. As we understand, it might be coming in, but it's 130th. It's on the same, across from the dump. There's a few properties in the city, and there was a recycling plant that wanted to come in. And they wanted to do, it's a long history of the site, they wanted to do breakdown automobiles, and our current recycling and industrial did not allow the recycling of the automobiles, or his site plan, so he requested
Okay.
anyways, there's a history to that, yes.
So like everyone else, I think, you know, in those zoning districts, I would support a permitted use in those districts. I also have some input on the suggested parking requirements. Again, with my background and history of kind of working on some of these types of projects, and also from the input of the two previous special use applications when they talked about their peak number of cars. It was 20 to 40 cars per hour. So my recommendation would be 1 per 500 square feet for non-vacuum and 1 per 500 square feet for vacuum stalls. So it would essentially be 2 per.
The length of the tunnel or the size of the building when you say
Size of the building.
Okay.
And that's all my input.
Okay.
I've got to be just kind of consensing that. It sounded like Sarah maybe had mentioned the C512 and CR conditional with some a list of conditions. But the rest of the consent of the board sounded like we didn't want it in the riverfront, the CR or the CWR,
I have to
zoning
put my-
district.
I have to put my input in.
I'm
too.
sorry, Louise, I'm so sorry.
You made me feel insignificant.
I already did that to Mr. Carter tonight, too.
Yeah, she's only the chairman, she doesn't count.
I'm on a roll tonight, making everyone sorry.
It just occurs to me while we're talking about this that we tend to be talking about what we have right now, but we're also talking about what will be in the future. And I think that
Graves Brothers annexation,
Gives-
that always blows
gives
my
us-
mind, though, when I start trying to plan that.
gives us some pause to be aware that if we say it's permitted in a certain district, it will be there, okay? We have to assume it will be there. And in going through this, at first, I thought that the commercial 512 would be appropriate. Until I looked at the map and I realized that most of commercial 512 backs up to residential.
Yeah.
And so that kind of took that, most of it, not all of it, but much of it does, although there are some patches that might. So I would say that I am most in favor of conditional uses. Everywhere except commercial riverfront, where I would say not allowed.
And CWR?
Yeah. And, commercial riverfront CR as well. I would allow it in industrial and I would allow it in heavy industrial, as a permitted use. I am a little bit concerned with, and you'll have to help me with this. If something is a conditional use, you can build your car wash. And then you build it and they do not come. What do you do with a car wash afterwards?
Sits there.
It's a single-purpose building, which concerns me. It's like, you can't convert that to much of anything else without tearing it down. But we've already lived through some things where they didn't tear it down. It just rusted away, rotted, the doors fell off, and it wasn't a car wash. It happened to be a fire station that we all know. And you would have thought the owner would have been more attentive to our concerns, but they weren't. So that's one of my concerns. Another of my concerns is if it is a conditional use and the person is not successful, the owner is not successful, goes away from the business, is there a length of time in which it must be in use as the conditional use, or it reverts back to?
No, so it would be if, and so conditional uses, if you haven't had a site plan come before you yet, so if there's a vacant piece of property and somebody says, I want to put a car wash here, and now they don't have to go through the special use. It comes through, it comes into staff as a site plan and the conditional use application. We have two separate applications, two separate fees. But those conditional use criteria are integral to the site plan. We're reviewing it. When it comes before you, it's going to be at the same time, processed at the same time. It doesn't come before you as a conditional use first, and then they come back and do the site plan. We do it at the same time. So you're going to get the conditional use application and the site plan, because you're going to need to see that they're meeting all the conditional uses with their site plan. And it's usually, we put it as one item, site plan and conditional use. You make two separate motions. You approve the conditional use, you approve the site plan, and then they come in for building permits. If that was then to 5 years down the road, it doesn't make it, and it sits there, it's grandfathered in as a car wash, so certainly another car wash operator could come in and possibly buy it. But say instead the market for car washes is oversaturated, and a brewery wants to come in, But a brewery, as a restaurant type of distillery, is a permitted use in that zoning district. The conditions, now we're converting that use, it's a change of use site plan, he's making it into a restaurant. That's the only thing I can think of that you could convert a car wash into at the time, this time. And then it goes back to a permitted use, it's a restaurant. Again, though, then if it wanted to be, something else comes in as a conditional use, it's gotta come back before you as a change of use with the conditional use criteria, and you meet that. So it's grandfathered in once it gets that car wash approval and the conditional use. But if it was to sit vacant for a certain amount of time, there's no time limit. We can't put an expiration date on the conditional use like we can a special use. Conditional uses are approved through a motion by the commission. It's not by a resolution before city council.
So a conditional use then runs with the property.
Until they do a change of use. If they come in then and want to make a retail building, retail use out of that building, or a brewery with a restaurant or an eatery or something, then we're doing a change of use site plan, because now we're checking parking. Because if if a car wash only has to come in with 4 or 5 parking spaces, a restaurant's gonna need more parking. This is where we get them updated with the landscaping, they may need some more parking. So we do this change of use site plan. And if it's a permitted use, now if it's another conditional use, they have to meet those conditions. If it's a bar, and the bar is a conditional use, they have to meet the bar conditional use criteria when they do that change of use.
Okay, got it. As far as suggested parking for a car wash, I would think that 10 parking spaces would be adequate, since people don't go and park there. They drive on through, a couple of employees, probably not more than 2 or 3 at a time, and maybe somebody running in to renew their membership. But so I would think that 10 parking spaces would be adequate, other than the vacuum places, which I guess you wouldn't.
So you're saying 10 including the vacuum places?
No, other than, in addition to.
Yeah. So what's coming before us and what's new in the market is these tunnel car washes. But you still could get a car wash that does more of your hand washing, going more towards boats or some of your RVs. So it might not always have I think the parking works better if we do it as a square footage per either the building or per bay. If a tunnel would count as 1 bay, but like the one in 512 has 4 bays. The current one on US 1, they've knocked a few down, but they had a few, I think they had 4 or 5 bays also, I'm not sure. I don't know enough about the car wash industry. When you have like a tunnel, how many employees do you have? Maybe that could be it too. We do have a couple of uses where our parking is based on the number of employees that you have. Manufacturing, I think, or something has some parking that's based on employees that work there.
I don't have real strong feelings about this, and I don't know much about car washes because I'm not a participant.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I'd
sir.
like to make a comment about that. There's a car wash up on US 1 in Melbourne, and that does a good business. They have, I think, because I've been naturally looking at these things as all this came up recently, they have approximately 20 spaces just for vacuums. They have like, I think it's 5 or 6 vacuums. And then they have 2 places where someone can rinse their car or scrub it before it goes into the tunnel. And then there's approximately, I think, 8 parking spots for employees that you see their cars parked in. So there's a lot of parking that would need to go into, a tunnel car wash. At least like the one that's up there anyway.
And that's what I'm saying, if we want to do either by, parking spaces per use, or parking spaces by building size, parking spaces by bays. That's something, I'll tell you what, if you're not expecting the ordinance that are next, we do have a meeting on May 4th, this may come back, the meeting after that.
Yeah.
But, we can certainly do a little research.
I think that would be appropriate.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah.
Regardless of what Yeah, I did have mine off. Two things, the triangle, there is some industrial property and commercial general property in the triangle overlay. But don't forget, that was part of our staff's recommendation for that car wash in the triangle is the triangle overlay reduced some of those uses. So what's allowed in our regular CG isn't allowed in the regular CG in the triangle. That still occurs. That's still going to apply. So even if we decide that we put car washes in CG, they will not be allowed anymore in the triangle. So that's, and the compound is, possibly will be, up for sale at some point. It's zoned public service. I'm presuming whoever buys that would rezone it to probably commercial general. Again, though, it would be that overlay is going to apply, not the commercial general, but they can come through. At that point, it would be a special exception. But if we put conditions in it, that it has to be a certain distance from another car wash, we're not going to get another car wash on the compound site because it'll be right next to Mr. Clean. So, but that's only if a special exception was granted. They wouldn't be able to meet that condition. The other thing I want to let you know too is I was happy about this for car washes. There are areas where we don't have the overlay requirements for some of our architectural. So in our CG areas, there would be no architectural requirements for these car washes. We can get the straight tunnel, flat roof. I did go by I've been trying to, as staff, I'm not crazy of the canvas awnings that are over these vacuum stations. They're usually bright colors. It was hard to see how those fit into our fishing village theme. And we were trying to see what was in our code so that we get more of a hard canopy over those stations. The Kiwi Car Wash on Route 60 in Vero has like a gas station canopy that and it's not flat roofed, it requires the pitch sides and over their vacuum station. And I remembered that a lot of the template for our riverfront overlay was the Route 60 overlay district. And sure enough, we found in the code where it is required for any type of canopy that it does have to be a hard canopy. So hopefully on our car washes, we're going to be requiring that we don't have individual canvas awnings over each of those vacuum stations. We'll get a nice canopy that everybody will park under, and I think that looks better with the building and all. So some of our zoning districts do have overlay districts and architecture requirements. So far what we're looking at in terms of the industrial CG, C512 has some architectural requirements. There's an overlay for that, but some of our zoning districts will not have don't have those architectural requirements if we do get allow car washes in those zoning districts.
Thank you. I live in fear of buggies. I want you to know that.
Tori, do you know what year the overlay district was set up on the 512?
The same time as the riverfront, or shortly after, and most of those with the riverfront committee, and a lot of that was a template for the 512, so it had to have been 2001, 2002.
Okay, that would be the reason why the city council ignored it when they approved the car wash, because
yes, the car wash on
they said
512.
we already have things in there that don't meet those requirements to begin with.
The car wash on 512 was 97, 98. However, they do have in the back where their vacuum stations are, they do have a hard canopy over that. But I think the car wash on 512 was not in the overlay district. It is in the overlay district now, but when it was built, it didn't have that. And
but one of the comments at the city council meeting for the Mr. Clean car wash was that there are already businesses in that overlay district that don't match what the overlay district says.
Yes.
So that's the reason they approved it.
Yes, it was 97, 98.
So
before
maybe
the
it's
overlay
time
districts.
we look at that overlay district again and bring it up to date.
And we certainly can do that in terms of if you felt that the new buildings that we are getting isn't in the vision of what you want anymore for that district. We do have, there's a few things in the code that I think should say must instead of possibly, or, may have this, but I think the new buildings coming in are okay. Unless there was a consensus, it would certainly be something you could ask council that you would like to look at to see if you wanted to look at some of those overlay district requirements for the architects and landscaping. I know some of the landscaping, when you have enough waivers with a certain code, you need to look at it. We've had almost a lot of our site plans in the overlay district. The riverfront has requested landscape waivers. Almost every site plan has come in and gotten a waiver from you guys. So I know eventually that's kind of on our list to get before you guys at some point to look over the landscape requirements in our overlays, because they can be kind of burdensome. even though I know that was the vision to have lots of landscaping. And we digressed off of our special use discussion, but.
Okay, you've kind of got the idea where we are with this
I've
one.
got to be honest, so if you guys can kind of direct me with your consensus of, is the consensus for not in the CR and CWR and our riverfront? I heard a couple say yes, and I don't know if anybody wanted to speak from the public, but
I think the Ms. Battles would allow it, but I think you're the only one who would allow it, right?
Yeah, I was thinking as a conditional use with all the conditions that I laid out, but I think everybody else was saying no. I do think if we are looking at any of the other commercial districts, I'm not sure what everybody said about the CL district, but I don't think it should be permitted in CL.
that was, the CL is where we only have two, one across from the high school there, which is on a commercial corridor. And then there's the CL on Schuman Drive, which I can't envision a car wash
Yeah,
on
I just
Schuman
think,
Drive.
I think the idea is for it to be more neighborhood-friendly uses, so. I think that's kind of an easy one that
I agree
we
with
all
that.
kind of agree with.
When I looked at the map, I thought the size kind of precluded it, but I wasn't thinking
But
of the
look, there
future.
could be
Thank
other,
you.
other properties that rezone to it
I
to
can
be able
disclose that
to
the
allow it,
I
yeah.
can disclose that the due diligence for a car wash was on that commercial limited piece across from the high school.
Yeah.
And so at this point, if we were to, and there's no application in yet though, anything, so if we were beginning this process and the ordinance got approved, if they were still a very, really wanted to go through with that, at that point it would become, they would have to go through the special exception. If we don't put car washes in commercial limited, which I kind of agree with the board, I don't think there's two small areas. Of course, we're just looking at what's on the map now. There may be some commercial limited
Correct,
areas in
yeah.
some of the annexations, so if it was going to be on there, I definitely would have the conditions. And that is adjacent to some residential uses in the county, so if there was any type of conditions on that. Yeah, commercial limited, I think we do maybe have to be a little careful, because even though we only have two, it's certainly future annexations may come in at commercial limited.
Okay.
I got the consensus definitely though of commercial general, industrial, heavy industrial. 512, I didn't hear anybody else really discuss that, except for Sarah. Is the 512 corridor still an open corridor or zoning district that you would feel? And that one, you're going to have to be, if we allow it in the C512, but we put conditions on requiring a distance from residential, you may eliminate that district anyways. And I don't think in any future annexation, so commercial riverfront and commercial waterfront residential are unique zoning districts to our riverfront. I don't think anything in the Graves annexation or annexation on 512 is going to want that zoning district. It's unique to our riverfront. C512 is very unique to the corridor on 512, and that reason that is we have no idea, but GDC platted those lots as 40-foot wide lots. And the county came back and said each one of those 40-foot wide lots is not going to get a driveway. So they have this master plan, and we also, because of the width and the length and abutting the residential, there is this unique zoning district. But I couldn't imagine something in the Graves Brothers annexation or something on 510 that's going to come in with the C512
Yeah.
zoning district, because we're never going to allow 40-foot wide lots in a commercial district.
But
So
a
that's
potential
gonna be-
applicant can come in combining a few of
Yes.
those lots.
Yes,
So,
but it would be
yeah.
the condition, though, of how much distance from the residential district
Yeah.
that we would put on
Yep.
that may eliminate any of a car wash on 512.
Okay,
Okay, we'll look at your next suggestion.
okay.
Go ahead.
And sorry, I keep going back because I'm just trying to get a clear consensus.
You're trying to get our
Yeah,
understanding.
so is
Yeah.
512 yay or nay?
So just go down the row and have everybody put their final opinion in for each one of those. But I had another quick question for you. Can a condition be site restoration?
I'm sorry, kind of a what?
A site restoration?
Does it
So,
have an expiration? Is that what you said?
no, a restoration.
Oh, restoration.
So these out-of-town chain car washes come through and they are unsuccessful, and they want to abandon the building, then they need to restore that site back to ground level.
As a condition?
Yes.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, that would be something bring before our city attorney. I'm not sure.
I just want to, I'm
Yeah.
thinking accountability, if they've got the willingness to want to come to a town, then they should also be willing to, if they have to depart, restore what it was before.
Yeah.
And,
With the
and that
logic-
helps us for less abandoned buildings.
It does. I
With
like that.
with the intention that they're single-purpose buildings is what we're standing on.
That is
But
correct.
what would happen, and I play the devil's advocate on some of this, so if the car wash goes out of business and has to declare bankruptcy, and it's the bank now that has that property, are we requiring the bank then? And demolitions can be up to $100,000 if you're removing a lot of equipment.
Do we care of that cost?
I don't know
Or
if we
do
have
we
the legal
care
right to
about-
impose that, though. That's what we would
Yeah.
have to ask the
Well,
city attorney.
we would have to ask, yeah, I'm with you, but
Yeah,
I think it's worth exploring.
sure.
That's-
And I can tell you from my experience that when banks own it, they,
Don't do anything.
no, they do. They can't sell it without taking care of what's on the
Yeah,
books,
and
and they do.
I'm
They
sorry,
do.
that was that they couldn't sell it until,
Until they, it's like, you have a municipal lien for that purpose. When they take it over, they examine that stuff. When they grant a mortgage or a loan on it, they will examine, what is the criteria.
So that kind of then
So-
poses another question. Can you then take away that conditional use in a sense? Are we talking about, in this case, it would be a conditional use? So if we require them, that kind of goes back to what you were talking about before, if we require them to demo that building and that use, it may play into that?
I don't know, and then my other legal thought is, can you be, even though we feel that it's because it's a single-purpose building though, can you be use-specific when you are applying monetary reclamation? And I'm gonna use the excuse because it's what city council had used on the bank. The World Savings Bank sat there for over 12, 13 years empty. And there's nothing in there, and that was a drive-through, and it was a conditional use. But we've never required, when you're empty for so many years, that you have to take the building down or whatever. So are we just being use-specific on that condition?
Yeah.
I
So there's some
wasn't,
legal matters that would certainly worth examining and
yeah,
and
I'm not
asking.
saying necessarily just on car washes. I'm thinking in general I mean, listen, we are volunteering for a fiduciary responsibility to represent the city of Sebastian for planning and zoning. So to the point of our chair is that it's not just what currently exists, but for the future as well. And I think some of that groundwork maybe hasn't been set and should be, that foundation for moving forward with it. I've seen cities in the past that if a Lowe's comes in, and they're a pretty good sized store, they're wrapped in brick because that's part of the aesthetic of an overlay or a plan of what it should look like. There's no reason why the city of Sebastian can't up their game. And listen, you either want to come and play and do business in Sebastian or you don't. It's quite easy. But there are enough businesses that want to be successful, and there is the support that's in Sebastian, that it can be a win-win at the end of the day. But I think the board is challenged with that and also has that opportunity to set some of that ground.
So kind of along those same lines of the not reclaiming, but making the site back to the original way it was, right? Restoration. That's kind of why I had talked about the redevelopment site condition in the commercial riverfront zoning. I think that it's something that we should, if we're gonna make any of these conditional, we should make that a condition because of that reason. That way, if they go under, I mean, the site was already not in use, right? It was a abandoned building or, a previously developed site that they redeveloped. So that might be a way in which we can kind of impose something legally. I mean, I think I would
Yeah.
encourage you, talk to attorney about what he had mentioned, but maybe the redevelopment site is a way that the city can impose a condition that's not a monetary one, so
Yeah.
to speak.
I'm thinking too, though, and we're all familiar with the car washes that we have in town, which are bays, and I'm gonna use the one on 512. Again, 4 or 5 bays, open areas, they have the car wash equipment. I don't know how you could repurpose that building or use it for anything else. It's bays, I don't know if you just put walls up, or, I don't know. Where I'm thinking, though, the newer car washes with these tunnels, if there's a requirement that you go, if you're out of business, you have to remove the car wash equipment, I don't know, but is that building now, it's a long tunnel type of building, but is that more adaptable to a restaurant or another use? I don't know.
Kind of
Usually,
skinny for a restaurant.
usually the structure is not, doesn't have the integrity that it would be required for redevelopment that way, usually.
Yeah,
But we could require it to be.
yeah.
Yeah, I think I think it's a good thing to explore. To your point with the tunnel, I'm sure they gotta have a grease trap and the way that they're trapping this water, cleansing the water, they're gonna reuse whatever the 70% was. They have the tracks that are cut out of that so to repurpose that building is not just, it's abandoned and, okay, let me walk in and throw some tile on the floor and hang my shingle. It's gonna be much more involved.
Yeah. I was just thinking more of the old utility building where the American Brewery is. I mean, that was an old building too that sat for a while. I'm sure that there was repurposing that had to be done, but if they had required that building to be taken down when it was gone, granted, it was a nice brick building and all. So I'm gonna be honest, it's really iffy if I'm thinking we can legally require that. We have now our codes in place require that even though it's an abandoned site, whoever owns that still has to maintain it in terms of grass cutting and landscaping, so it still has to be, I think there was a little bit more we could have done for the World Savings Bank when the building itself was getting mold, and at some point, it could have been looked at as an unsafe structure. So that's still in place, but in terms of requiring that they have to remove the building or the use, I'm not sure if that's gonna be legal. We'll certainly look into that, though, for sure, with our city attorney, interim city attorney. But back to just the zoning districts, 512 is the only one I'm still not sure what the consensus is.
Let's just go through and everybody just, we'll
Or
start
raise
on
hands.
this end. Just for 512 district, what is your pleasure?
So I think I am now leaning a little bit towards conditional use, with some of the same conditions I had mentioned for riverfront. Obviously, it'd be a little bit different, because not US 1 frontage, but, the setbacks for noise considerations, and then the distance from another car wash and not adjacent to residential use.
Once we establish the conditional criteria, that'll be the same for all zoning districts. You won't have different
okay.
criteria for this zoning
Got it.
district and this one, so we'll definitely work on all of those that will apply to anything.
Should you just go down?
So 512 is a yay or nay for Sarah?
As a conditional
say
use,
yes?
yes,
Yeah,
as a conditional use.
Conditional.
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 Conditional?
Okay.
Conditional?
I don't vote.
This isn't a vote, this is just a
Not a
discussion, so
vote.
it's,
Conditional.
okay. Okay, so I have consensus of industrial, heavy industrial, commercial limited, commercial general, and C512. And then we will work on, now, when you say conditional, we can definitely have some uses that are zoning districts that they can be permitted. Like, I would think heavy industrial and industrial would just be permitted. You don't necessarily have to have conditions unless you want to make them all conditional, but.
Can we go down the list for each one of them and then you just do like a tick mark for how we felt about it? Because I'm not sure that the commercial limited, I would say not allowed.
Okay. I was just considering that commercial limited is one of those zoning districts that annexations could come in at. So we can still set it up as conditional and look at the sites that we have now. But there may be a property on 512, 510 that may come in and annex in, but would like commercial limited. So we don't want to restrict it just to what we have now. There are definitely some zoning districts that that aren't going to be annexed in or ask for that zoning if you annex in.
But so why would they come in commercial limited if they wanted to come in with a car wash? Why wouldn't they come in as CG? Or, you know, a different one that had it as a condition?
No, so not necessarily a car wash that wants to annex in, but there may be a developer that has 100 acres along 510 that comes in as commercial limited, because maybe it is going to be adjacent to a residential PUD that the county's developing or something. So they come in as commercial limited, and then he's going to sell off, you know, 2-acre tracts or whatever, and he comes in as commercial limited. And then a car wash approaches him and says, I want to put a car wash, I'll buy 10 acres from you or something. So it might not be a car wash that annex in. You're right, if it was, they would annex in with.
Yeah, I guess in that case, I would say that then if they sold off those pieces that, you know, if they wanted to put a car wash in, then they would have to come forward and request to rezone that 2-acre parcel
Yeah.
to CG or whatever other zoning district that had it as a conditional or permitted use.
Okay, no,
That's my
that was
opinion.
we're just throwing out for future annexation stuff. We certainly we can eliminate the C.
I mean, that's,
commercial
I
limited.
share her opinion as well. I mean, just because currently it is, and for your point that you said, well, they may want to do it and have a PUD next to it, well, then do we want that car wash next to that PUD? So we already are saying, no, we don't.
Okay,
So why do we want to potentially permit it?
okay, no, that's,
When
and
they could do a
that's fine.
special exception
And
if
that's a
there was something
consensus too,
to.
commercial limited is one of those zoning districts we don't want to allow it as a permitted or conditional use.
That's just an opinion that's a biased opinion here.
Okay.
That's-
So I pretty much have commercial general, industrial, and heavy industrial, and C512 for car washes. Is that the consensus, it sounds like? Okay.
Okay. Moving right along.
I think we'll definitely, if we can go through the uses, this is good, and then we will come back to, I think it'll be a discussion meeting, and we can come up with conditional uses. Because this way we can staff can maybe put together more on the zoning districts that you have chosen, some information about those. We can also do a little research to see what some of the other conditions in other municipalities may be, and parking, and we'll come back with that then, if that
Okay.
works.
Great.
Okay, but we've got car washes.
Okay, should we take a look at RV resorts and campgrounds? And we'll start with Mr. Carter again.
Well, I'm going with not allowed all the way down to, industrial, conditional, and heavy industrial, conditional.
Okay. Ms. Geesey?
I would agree with that.
Linda?
Yeah, I don't wanna see them in the commercial waterfront residential or the commercial riverfront. I don't wanna exclude CL or CG because like Dory said, out by 510 and 512, it's a possibility. I wouldn't wanna see it further down CR 512. You know what I'm talking about?
When we get,
From where the triangle portion is up to maybe Roseland Road. I wouldn't want to see any RV resorts in
yeah,
that
that's
area.
mostly your C512
But
zone.
beyond that,
Mhm.
where the 510 section is and the new developments are coming in, if they're gonna do commercial general, commercial limits, and I wouldn't have a problem putting one there.
Yeah, that is commercial general, where the Dollar General store is and the,
Yeah,
store right.
where the
in street,
storage
yeah.
place is and things like that.
Mhm.
So I don't wanna eliminate them because of that reason only. But I don't wanna see them in CR or, commercial waterfront residential. They could definitely go in industrial or like heavy industrial.
Okay. And I'm going to take my turn so I'm not insignificant. I would allow, or as conditional use, in commercial limited, and commercial general, not allowed in commercial 512 or in commercial riverfront, not permitted in commercial waterfront residential, yes permitted in industrial, and conditional in heavy industrial. That would be me. And I also want to just say again, remember folks, this isn't just for what we have now, this is for the 2,000 acres that are coming in as well. I am sure there will be appropriate sites as we grow, if we continue to grow. Okay.
I'd have to agree with Ms. Kautenberg. Definitely the conditional uses in the CL and CG. Hopefully it will alleviate the campsites that take place at our overflow parking by the park. Do have people that tend to pull in there for a few nights, and I guess the police do get them to move on, because then we see them down other parking lots. And conditional use, you could then really put the restrictions on, you know, if they're going to empty their tanks, if, you know, the length of time, if there's a length of time limit.
So for RV resorts, there's a lot of health department, environmental health. You still have to, I'm pretty sure on an RV resort, you're still registering with the state to get that license. There's a lot of the gray water, your hookups and all that. A lot of those requirements are done by the health department.
And they have to do that before they even come to us for a site plan.
It would, yes,
Pretty much.
probably the construction, you know, it'd be on a list of permits
Yeah.
needed, but before you get that CO, or before you even get your building permit, land clearing, we're requiring to
And
see
that would be
covered.
all in the conditional. Right, great.
Okay, I'm on the 512, I had not allowed on that. And the commercial limited based on future growth would be conditional. The CG, I'm kind of torn between the conditional use and the not allowed. Right now, I'm leaning more towards the not allowed, but I could maybe be persuaded a little on that one. Riverfront, no. Residential, waterfront, no. In the industrial and heavy, I still think there should be some type of conditional use on that.
I'm afraid to comment. I have not allowed all the way. And I mean, and mostly it's, you know, there's no revenue based for this. It's just using our facilities, our city. If you go to industrial and heavy industrial and thinking about the future, do we want something that is set up there? And so we welcome RVers in to go and work for these factories that could be here potentially, and that's how they set their residency up. So for me, I just think there's enough in the city already, and it's just a no.
So I think I had shared before, I think this should remain as a special use. I think that this is such a niche use that, you know, I can see there being specific places where it makes sense, but I don't think it's appropriate to allow it in any certain district as a blanket, you know, allowing, essentially. So my vote would be to remain as a special use.
And so I'm going to just throw out a little staff observations also. If I'm an RV resort, I don't know, developer, I'm no way going to put my RV resort next to the county dump. So, or a large manufacturing plant. So I'm going to be honest, I'm very surprised you guys said industrial and heavy industrial, because that'd be like the last place that I would want an RV resort, that I would even develop into that. We do have somebody looking at, are you looking, so we can certainly put, we did for the campground, at the existing campground that Skydive has, I can say, I'm not saying that it's being enforced as well as it should be. But you certainly, if you do an RV resort, and we do put it in a zoning district, it can be conditional use, and you can require that it is short-term rentals, that you can't have an RV that comes in there and stays there for a month or 3 months. It'd have to be one of these weekly, or, I'm not sure if we can do that, but you certainly can make it short-term, which, similar to our vacation rentals, is less than 30 days. Do you look at an RV resort as similar, bear with me this, as a hotel? We, as tourists, we're asking tourists to come in, we want them to visit our restaurants and use our waterfront, and this is a type of hotel, a type of bed and breakfast, you're just bringing your own mobile. So, is that a consideration? I don't know. I know what you're saying, we don't want these RVs to come in and stay for 9 months and act as a single-family residence or that, but there is possibly one on the riverfront. There's 6 acres that are available, and if it's done right, it could be a very nice resort, fisherman camp or something like that, where you're bringing those in. So, is it better to possibly see what they're proposing? Is it something we want in the type of RV resort you're going to do by keeping it special use, or do we just really don't want them in the community?
Yeah, so
whether short-term or
I'll give
long-term?
my opinion on this. I know I give my opinion a lot, but, as a camper myself, I think you get a very different type of clientele when you have a stay that is limited to, say, 14 days, like the county limits stays within the county at the county, Donald McDonald. You can only stay for 14 days. There's a very different clientele than if you were to allow a 9-month stay. I do see your point about making it another place, but I generally wouldn't support that. I think I would support more along the lines of a shorter stay, and you have a different group of people. That's all I can say.
I have to, also having lived the RV life, and we were not transients. I have stayed at some really gorgeous places where you own your lot. And a very good local, somewhat local, is River Ranch. All the people out there, they own the lots, and they are beautifully kept. And they come and they go, and we also need to think about that, and they're very well kept because they have lots of rules and lots of landscaping and all of that kind of stuff, lots of maintenance goes on. These are people who come to the community just to spend money. Okay, they don't send their kids to school.
Sure.
You know, they just come here to spend money. That's not a bad thing.
So
Not a
that
bad
is the RV resort, the special use that was approved for the one at Chester's Gap. Remember I said there's 2 pages of conditions, and it was a luxury RV resort where you would own your lot, but it also had, one of the restrictions was the type of RV, it had to be a Class A, and apologize if I got the wrong classes, but it was
Nope,
just the
that's
large
correct.
one, that was the whole thing. You couldn't bring in a pop-up, so that was a special use condition. But through the special use, they were able to put those conditions on it.
I think by saying conditional use, as opposed to not allowed at all, it allows you to open it up to some very nice people with plenty of money to spend, but insert plenty of rules to go along with it. And I don't have an objection to it because I think it's an asset to the community.
I was in the RV industry for like 18 years, so I'm pretty familiar as well. And if it was a deed restricted, I think that's a different thing. So if it's a special, can special use have these rules already assigned to them, that they have to be a deed restricted, that they have to be Class A motorhomes, they have to be 45 feet?
As soon as we establish conditional use criteria, now we have regulations, so it won't be a special use.
Okay.
And I think, maybe this is one of those RV resorts or campgrounds, as we've all traveled and seen them, each one of them are different, so is it hard to put them under a blanket conditional use criteria? this may be one that you may decide to keep as a special use if, after reconsideration. If you still would rather have them in, the commercial limited and commercial general, then yes, then we can establish some, instead of calling them deed restrictions, it would be conditional use criteria. Or we can continue to leave it as a special use because we acknowledge that maybe each one that comes in will be different.
I could be swayed for deed restriction for sure, because I think then you're setting a special type of user at that point versus, when we used to be weekend warriors, that's a different camper. And I can be convinced to the other. For conditional, for some, yeah.
Okay.
I can remember two situations in code enforcement. Rich Iacchini was dealing with a man and his wife who were having trouble finding a place for they were, I think, at one of the parking lots in one of the plumbing facilities that we have. I can't remember if it was Meeks or the other Maxwell. And Rich worked very hard trying to find him a place that he could be for the length of time he needed. So obviously, there's a need for RV people, for campers in that. And yes, I'm in agreement with the whole deed restriction and conditional uses, most definitely. And maybe it will alleviate the ones that are parking in Main Street parking lot and,
Or next door to me.
oh, you've got one next door to you?
Three of them this all winter long.
Oh, good grief.
Not easy to get rid of them.
What we have to think, though, is if you're an RV owner, though, these zoning districts that we're putting them in, commercial general is going to be, granted, commercial general, nobody mentioned anything in the riverfront, but that's where they're going to want to go. And I don't know if we're going to, it's not our ideal development of the Shady Rest, but that's, commercial riverfront. I can't imagine 18 acres, another RV resort, but we have been approached for an RV resort at that. And in the riverfront, you're going to want to camp where you're going to enjoy scenery and not be on a main highway. So I don't know if that's still the direction you want to go in commercial limited, commercial general. I got to be honest, I don't agree with the heavy industrial, because I just can't see anybody wanting to come in. That's the other uses that can be. But if it's a consensus is that you don't want it in our riverfront, we certainly will put those into the districts then that are applicable, if that's still what you want the direction.
Okay. Do we have a consensus on this? Or do we want to?
Yeah, I can be swayed to change my vote to the riverfront area.
Let's go through again and we'll start down here.
I think she's got it.
Remain as a special use.
I could do conditional for the CL/CG.
For which one?
CL and CG, no riverfront, no.
I'm gonna stick with my original.
It was the CL and commercial general?
The CL was conditional.
I would definitely add the CL and CG as conditional.
What she said.
I'll take CL and CG, conditional use, special in commercial riverfront, because I want to see it.
Once we set regulations, we can't use the special use process anymore.
It can
Because
only
we're
be in
creating
one place?
regulations now.
Okay. Then conditional all the way.
For CL and CG?
Yes, and CR.
And
I will
CR.
look at CR.
Okay.
There were so many good arguments made that I'm wavering now. I don't, not in the riverfront, not allowed in the riverfront and the waterfront residential. They might not choose to go in industrial or heavy industrial, but I think it ought to be allowed.
Okay.
They probably won't do it anyway. And back to the commercial ones. I would say conditional for commercial, CL, and CG.
I'm going to remain with what I said initially, not allowed all the way down to Industrial and heavy industrial, both of those are conditional.
Okay,
I have a consensus of the CL and CG as conditional.
okay. Shall we take a look at kennels?
Bow wow.
And we'll start with Ms. Battles
Meow
this
for
time,
me.
just to shake things up a little bit.
Okay, so this one, a little conflicted about, but I do think that there needs to be conditions set on the kennels because of the nature of the use.
And I probably
And-
just jumping in first, we do have a definition in our code book for kennel, that's the only thing. And so I do want to disclose that, I'm thinking that if we do.
Did you give us that?
How we would want to, the kennel, you want to read, I can read that to you. So we have on 512, there's a veterinarian who, so a kennel is not going to be if the veterinarian does some surgery on a pet and he has to keep him there a couple of days, or surgery recovery, and he has an area for his dogs and there's a run, that is going to be more of an accessory use to a veterinarian. So that's not what we would consider a kennel, and that's pretty much what our code kind of goes into state. A kennel is going to be what we do have on US 1 already. It's a place, it could be a rescue kennel, it could be a doggy daycare, and the nature of those is that, yes, you have inside, but you're also going to have the outside runs for the dogs.
Yeah.
That, just want to make sure we're all on the same page for what a kennel would be, for our use. if somebody
So, given that, I think that there needs to be some sort of condition of minimum lot area. Because, you're talking about dogs, animals, they need space. So, I am kind of considering conditional use, everywhere except the commercial waterfront residential. And the conditions being the minimum lot area, increased setbacks and buffers to adjacent residential for noise considerations. And then as far as the parking, I think we have parking requirements for kennels currently.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a definition in parking and nothing else. Well, so we
Yep.
still look at that, we still look at that as a special use if it's not designated in zoning districts. So here and there, we have something, but,
I think we also need to consider that a kennel might be a breeder's place,
okay.
okay?
And something like this, we would definitely, so car wash, we don't have a definition. And we're not going to, remember the car use applicants were arguing that it could be considered vehicular maintenance and service. So we'll definitely put a car wash definition in, and we'll also put a kennel definition in. We'll tweak the one that we have, that it can be, we'll use something general, but lead into somehow wording it saying that.
Excluding breeders.
Accessory to a veterinarian is excluded as a kennel use. So anything that anybody comes up, breeders or doggy daycare, whatever they want to use it, it's not.
Or I guess in her
considered
point,
kennel.
she's just mentioning that it could be breeders that are, breeding dogs,
Yes.
which might be something we want to exclude from the definition.
Oh.
I don't know.
Yes, that's a consideration
Is
if
that
that's
why?
how you feel.
Or are you
Well,
thinking the
yeah,
opposite?
And when you get to that, there's a difference between Lhasa Apsos and coonhounds, rather significant. So if you're in a district where a pack of coonhounds might disturb the neighbors.
Yeah.
But
that may be-
it's okay, they only howl when they see each other.
So that may be something we want to, a breeding facility is prohibited under our kennel definition or something like that.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Madam Chair?
Okay.
I would say that only conditional or even possibly permitted in industrial and heavy industrial. I've seen many of daycares from where I'm from, and they're always in industrial areas. They're always where the hotels are, they're always where there's large commercial industrial warehouses, but never just kind of mixed in with any other type of a business. So I would limit it to only industrial.
Okay.
That's how I had that at the beginning with the. Sorry, I apologize. I thought I hit it hard enough. Industrial and the heavy industrial with a condition, found no on the waterfront residential's CR. And possibly, again, you know, just based on future growth, the CL as a conditional. But there's just so much residential in the CG and the 512 that I don't know. There'd have to be so many stipulations there, and I don't know that, so right now I'm gonna go with the not allowed.
So industrial, heavy industrial and commercial limited?
And the the commercial limited, everything else, no.
Well, as you all know, I walk the riverfront every morning, and we know what time all the puppies at Halo wake up, because you can hear them on Indian River Drive. Now, I have a lot of respect for Halo. I think they're the most fabulous organization. They do so much. So, no faulting Halo. They wake up, and just like us, before we have our coffee, we might be grumpy. You know? So, yes, kennels can be very noisy. Even if it's in the building, if you got a lot of them talking to each other, it's going to be noisy. I'm for conditional use. Now, the commercial riverfront, you said, is part of Route 1 or no?
Commercial riverfront is mainly along, 98% of it is on US 1.
It
There are
is.
a couple of properties that do abut Indian River Drive, Washington Plaza, that are CR. But then, the north part of Indian River Drive is CWR. Of course, the south part is our RM8, where we have the residential until you get back down to Mulligan's and the park. And then there's some,
So, I mean, I'm for conditional use, but a big fat no on the waterfront.
CWR.
Yeah.
Is there a difference in your minds for kennels, versus doggy daycares? Is there a need for like a little pocket doggy daycare that we put a condition that you only have 6 dogs or 7 dogs? Is that a benefit to the residents? That we would have something different?
What's our residential limit on, because don't we have a limit on how many dogs you can have in your residence?
I gotta be honest, the code is that we follow Indian River County, and I don't know what that number is.
Yeah, I almost want to say it was like no more than 5, if I recall.
I think it's
Yeah.
5.
So,
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you can do a doggy daycare as a home occupation, like you can't have customers come in your house. I know childcare you can do, so you probably can't even do it out of your home. But I was just thinking in some of our pocket neighborhood commercial limited, you know, that a doggy daycare may be beneficial if we allow it up to 10 dogs or 15 dogs, and it's only open to 6 o'clock, no overnight stays or something. Now, that would be different from a kennel, right? Kennel is where you can keep a dog overnight and weekly. So I don't know if that's a consideration, that we break apart doggy daycare from a kennel.
Madam Chair, I wanted to say that most small dogs are not raised in a kennel, they're raised in a home atmosphere, and so are cats. As far as kennels and doggy daycare, they are different. I would say conditional use for everything except the waterfront, and I would try to get something in about the number of dogs.
If we do it as a conditional.
That makes a huge difference. So those are the conditions.
And it may be different then from kennel, from a doggy daycare, you would maybe only want, that's why I was thinking that it may be different conditions, so maybe we should break them apart. Doggy daycare and kennel, or conditions that if you're licensed as a doggy daycare, you can keep it all in the same conditional criteria, but doggy daycares may only have up to 10 dogs, 15 dogs, or a kennel would be an unlimited amount, I don't know.
I think the key is the definition needs to be very
Yeah.
specific.
yeah.
And I'm not sure if kennels are licensed by the state. I'm thinking they may have some oversight on health and sanitary. I don't know. I will look into that before we get to our definition.
I think we skipped over you, Linda.
Yeah, that's okay.
So now you're insignificant.
It's all right. I would say not allowed in commercial, riverfront and also commercial waterfront. I'm allowing it in industrial, the kennels. Doggy daycares is a different story, and then conditional for commercial general and CL.
Your turn.
My turn? Commercial 512 conditional, commercial limited conditional, commercial general conditional, commercial riverfront not allowed, riverfront residential or waterfront not allowed, industrial, heavy industrial permitted. I would like to see some setbacks from residents as condition. And of course, you know, parking spaces and, the normal conditions that we have.
I think that's consensus I got from that we don't have to go back over, is, industrial and heavy industrial, we would allow those to be permitted without any conditions, you're in that type of area. And then, I only had one for C512, but the CG and CL would be conditional, and we'll come back and work with those, and same with parking and all. The consensus was not in the riverfront, CR, or
I think
CWA.
there were more than one for C512.
Pardon me? I did. You had more than 512? I only heard one as well.
Oh, okay. I thought
I
there
didn't
was
hear a
more.
lot of mention of the 512.
Okay.
512 would be a conditional
What do
use?
you think 512 is? What do you?
That would be a conditional use, or I didn't hear a lot of 512, but, it sounds like besides our riverfront, all of our other commercial limited, C512 and CG, we would make conditional, and we can
I
come up with the
don't see
conditions.
how a kennel could fit on commercial 512. There's not really, it backs up to too much of residential.
Yeah, and that would be one of those that if we put a condition in of being a distance from a
Right.
residential area. So, commercial general, commercial limited, will make it a conditional use and permitted it in industrial and HI, and heavy industrial.
I'm hoping that the conditional use is real strong on packs of coonhounds.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have to have pretty strong conditions and defining definitely definitions of daycare and kennels, because I know daycares, cross over to boarding as well, which then, you know, how close are you becoming a kennel when you're gonna board the dog for a week or 2 weeks
Yeah.
while somebody's vacationing? So I just think we're gonna have to spend some time on definitions.
Yeah, and I think, it's a clear, what's the word I'm trying to say, the name of the business, Doggy Daycare, leads to it that it is just the day, where if boarding kennel can be overnight and weekly and all, so, yes, we'll look and, again, we'll pull other definitions from other municipalities, see what comes, bring it before you, we certainly can tweak it to our own, but we'll kind of jump off to see what other people have on that, for that one. I know we still have another one, but I think what I'm gonna do is, it sounds like some of you did fill out your worksheets. If you're comfortable giving that to me, so I have it, or if, a copy of it or something, but I think next week or the next time we discuss this, we'll set it up so we can really work on the conditional uses, and I'll try and maybe make it on a meeting where we don't have a public hearing, so we've spent a lot of time in discussing, and I really appreciate you guys staying to do this. But I'll bring back the zoning districts, where we have consensus on this, and at least I'll show you where we've inputted into those zoning districts, just to make sure we're all good with that. And then we'll work on parking and the conditional
Great.
uses at the next discussion. Okay, and one remaining one.
The last one is laundromats.
I don't know if that's a unique type of business, I just, it's a lot of water usage, but, we just don't have anything in our code book. And every once in a while, somebody has asked, hey, can I put a laundromat in this building or something like that? And we've had to say we had to do it as a special use, but I don't know that it's a unique enough use, we just don't have anything in our code on where it would fit. Is it retail, is it, what kind of use we would put it under? So we threw it out there to see if you guys had any ideas on if you wanted to make it a specific use and, specific zoning districts.
I'll start this time. I would make it, certainly, it would come, a plan would come to us, but I would say it could be permitted in 512, could be a conditional use in commercial limited, could be permitted in commercial general, could not be permitted in commercial riverfront, not permitted in commercial waterfront residential, could be permitted in industrial.
I'm sorry, what was the last one?
It could be, it is permitted in industrial, and that would be, of course, we have some appearance and maintenance issues with some of these, but that's what I would say. And now we'll go to Linda.
I have it conditional on 512, commercial limited and commercial general, not permitted in the riverfront or or waterfront residential, and then permitted in industrial.
There is, Squid Lips, just throwing this out, they have a new marina office. And because they have the marina, if you remember, the floor plan for the marina office has a gift shop, it has a shower, and it does have a small, I don't even know if we want to call it a laundromat, but there was a washer and dryer area for an accessory use to the marina. So we have kind of already approved it, but it was an accessory use to that marina. It was part of that marina office. And I know some of your larger marinas down in Fort Pierce, they actually have a laundry room for those boats that come in. So with regard to saying, I think our codes, and we had that in there, we allowed it because in that zoning district, it says, we have as permitted uses, accessory uses to permitted uses. And also under conditional uses, it says all accessory uses to conditional uses. So I think we are covered that way. So in our definition for laundromat, we'll definitely clarify that this is not accessory to any of an existing use or
Right.
permitted use.
Yeah.
This would be a standalone laundromat.
And this is a full laundromat.
Yes.
This is not something.
Yeah.
I mean, because there are laundries, washer and dryers in the hotels as well.
Yes, yes,
So-
or vacation rentals or whatever.
They're
Yes.
not laundromats.
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
this
we
would
can't
be a
just go in
standalone.
there and wash our clothes in there.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, sure
Or go
you
down to
could.
the marina office and go down to the marina
I don't
office and-
know, I haven't really.
Okay, so that's clarification too that we're talking. So, okay, so we'll finish up with consensus on those.
Ms. Geezy,
Cindy?
your turn.
Okay, I would say permitted use for 512 and commercial limited and commercial general, not on the riverfront or waterfront, and allowed in industrial and heavy industrial. And I think, if we have RV parks, we're probably going to need more laundromats unless they want to go to the car wash with their clothes, so.
Or unless they have an accessory laundromat
Right,
in the RV resort.
And they will.
They do. Mr. Carter?
512, permitted. Commercial limited, permitted. Commercial general, permitted. Commercial riverfront, conditional. Commercial waterfront residential, conditional. Industrial and heavy industrial, permitted.
My turn. I'm kind of following along with pretty much everybody. Definitely, I think I want to do more on the conditional use, only because I've seen here in Florida, completely contained in a building laundromats, and then laundromats that had outside, I don't know if the washers or dryers are outside the building. So I'm leaning more toward conditional use, just to make sure things like that don't happen, that it should be contained. And I would say 512, commercial limited, commercial general, all conditional use, commercial riverfront, and then permitted in, industrial and heavy industrial, not that it would be there. For a freestanding laundromat, I would say not permitted for the waterfront residential.
For what'd you say,
The commercial waterfront residential, not permitted.
okay.
Sherry?
Okay, I'm leaning toward on the laundromat for 512 CL and CG as conditional use. For a standalone on the CR and the waterfront residential, no, and then permitted in industrial and heavy industrial.
Ready? I would say that, sorry, my nose has started to bleed here. A quick question, laundromat and dry cleaner, two different?
Yes, I know that dry cleaners are, I think that's another special use. I don't think we have anything in our codes. The dry cleaners are very heavily regulated because of the chemicals they use. And as I understand, even, it's either the health department or the state, the dry cleaner that we have in town would never be allowed to be that close to the river, based on current, regulations. But yeah, we don't have anything, I don't know if that's a, you know, like, again, a service or retail type of thing, or if it's, something that we may want to look at as being specific in our zoning districts or a special use, but, to me, laundromats are more on the use of car wash. There's a lot of water usage. They pay a lot of ERUs for utilities. I don't know if you reclaim water in a laundromat also. Something I can check with, but, definitely different from a dry cleaner.
Okay. Then I would do conditional use on 512 CLCG and not allowed on the remaining.
So when I was thinking about this, I kind of was taking the approach of thinking about what is this use going to serve, right? And so when I was thinking about the commercial riverfront and the commercial waterfront residential, I don't think those areas are going to be the areas in which the people that want to go to these laundromats would be wanting to drive to, in my opinion. So I think they're, you know, so I put not allowed in those. And then the rest of them, I put conditional use. And the reason I guess I am leaning towards conditional use on all of them instead of permitted use is that I feel like there's a few things that, just because of the type of business it is, I think that we should pose some conditions. A couple of you had mentioned some things that I wrote down as well, and I agree with. The building itself having all of the laundry facilities contained inside and not having an open side, open air. They must be required to connect to county water and sewer. I think that would be no matter where they're at. And then I guess I would have a little bit of concerns on the hours of operation. I know a lot of these tend to operate 24 hours a day, and I would tend to be more on the side of maybe limiting the hours of operation. So I have conditional use in all of them except for not allowing in commercial riverfront and commercial waterfront residential.
I don't have this on the worksheet, but is there a scenario where, RM8 and our RM10 residential multifamily, so you could have an RM10, you could have an apartment building that, if they were to put in their own laundry facilities, would be accessory to that
Accessory,
permitted
yeah.
use. But what if the apartment property manager did not want to run that and they didn't want to have to provide that management of the maintenance for those machines and had an outside vendor come in? Because it is you know, with your quarters and dimes or whatever. And so they had an outside vendor come in. Is it something we would want to put in RM8 zoning district? Is that a scenario that you see happening, or to cover that base?
Are you saying it would be within the building footprint of the apartment building? Or are you saying like a separate?
Even a townhouse subdivision, well, yeah, that's what I'm trying to think. I think mostly, I guess, apartments. Apartments don't always have laundry facilities. A townhouse, you're probably gonna have your own washer and dryer in your townhouse or condo facility. I was just thinking, you know, if you had something that came in with, 12, 14 apartment buildings, or let's just say something like Pelican Island on Powerline Road, but they didn't want to operate the laundromat, because nobody wants to take care of all those washer and dryers breaking down, so they leased an area to a private vendor.
They could do that, but it's a terrific profit center.
Yeah.
I
So
can't imagine
the
anybody
lease
not doing
would
that.
then trigger a separate use?
That's what I'm trying to say, would we still
Review, or-
consider that accessory to
Yeah.
the
I think so,
permitted
yeah.
use? So
Oh,
we're
yeah,
back to
yeah.
that. Okay, just running
Agreed.
that scenario past, whatever, okay. It would still be a private business, but we consider it accessory to that approved use.
I think so.
Okay,
I almost see it as vending machines.
true, that's true, that's true. So definitely, there's definitely a clear consensus on this, that conditional uses in 512 CLCG, not in the riverfront, permitted in industrial and heavy industrial, is a laundromat. And I think the conditionals that we have discussed are good, I've wrote them down, so when we present that or work on that, we'll definitely have that, have some of the conditional uses that you guys have mentioned tonight, we'll put together for the next packet. We can go from there and add or take away, tweak.
Okay.
Now, did you want our worksheets? You
It's
requested
up to you, now I thought about it, have you all filled them out, or maybe you didn't fill them out, they were just kind of. for
Like
your
so crazy
workshop?
marked up now.
Yeah, let's, I will, I have my notes, and I'm gonna rely on Janet and her
You
minutes
can have mine
to
as
help
long
with
as you
that.
grade mine on a curve.
All right,
Okay.
I know this was a couple
Mine
hours,
have
thank
X's
you.
everywhere because I got swayed in between.
Yes,
Yeah, I have some stories.
We changed our minds.
Yeah.
Okay, the next item, I think we're finished with this then, wrap, thank you all. And,
Yeah, it was good stuff.
It was really good to talk about this, I appreciate the
I
opportunity.
can't promise it'll be the next meeting, there's a couple of public hearings, but we'll definitely get to a point where we'll, I'll try and put this together. It won't be draft ordinances at this point, but, at least highlight into the zoning districts and parking and definitions and conditional uses. We'll try and have a little bit more for you that we can tweak, but that'll be our next discussion then for that. Thank you.
Great. Okay, the next item of business is we must elect a vice chairman. And the memorandum states that, and I'm going to read it out loud, regarding officers for the Planning and Zoning Commission states, quote, "Whenever possible, the person selected as the chairperson and vice chairperson of the commission shall have served 2 years as a regular member of the commission and shall have attended at least 90% of the meetings of the Planning and Zoning Commission, which such member was not otherwise excused from attending by the chairperson at such meetings of the commission." We do not have anyone other than Mr. Carter, who has the 2-year seniority, and he chooses,
No, I would make a nomination there to Ms. Linda Kitchen for vice chairman.
Do we need a second?
I would make a nomination for Sarah Battles.
okay. I think we need a second on each nomination?
Yes,
I
you
believe
do.
so, yes.
Okay,
Okay, I'll second Linda.
okay.
And I will second Sarah.
All right, let me get that straight. Ms. Matthews, Ms. Bell,
Yes, ma'am.
and
Me?
Ms. Russo, Ms. Kinch.
Yes.
For seconds, yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
And at this point, then Janet will do roll call, and you'll voice
So,
the name.
so is, Mr. Carter not,
Oh, so I apologize, the nominations, they should be accepted by the person that was nominated, so if Ms. Kitchen accepts the nomination?
Yes.
And Sarah accepts the nomination?
yes.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Nominations are closed. Now, if you'll do, we'll do the,
Yes.
roll call for vote.
Ms. Kinchin,
Kinchen. I voted for myself.
Good vote.
Ms. Battles,
I'll vote for Ms. Battles.
Ms. Cottenberg,
I'll vote for Ms. Kinchin.
Ms. Matthews,
Ms. Battles?
Mr. Haddocks,
Ms. Battles.
Ms. LaRusso,
Miss Kinchin?
and Mr. Carter.
Ms. Kitchen?
I can't tell how many people voted for whom.
1, 2, 3, 4, we're
Four.
Kinchin.
4 for Ms. Kinchin, 4 for Ms. Kinchin, and 3 for Ms. Battles.
So Ms. Kinchin is approved, the motion carries.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I just want to say thank you for being willing.
I guess I was thinking that it says whenever possible. I thought that Mr. Carter would have been the one that we would
didn't
have.
want to.
He didn't want to. I see.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
He's our motion maker. Okay. That is the end of tonight's business. I thank you all for your participation. This meeting is adjourned.